Draft week is finally here, and Dallas is sitting with 2 first-round picks that could completely reshape this defense. But here's the thing nobody is talking about. The Cowboys could walk away from day one as either geniuses or the laughingstock of the NFC East, depending on how they play this. Before we dive into the pairings that would have every Cowboys fan losing their minds in the best way possible, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button right now, because we are covering every single Cowboys draft update the second it drops. And honestly, we need your support. We're grinding to build the best Cowboys community on YouTube, and you being here matters. Now let's get into the combinations that would make Thursday night one to remember, because if Dallas nails picks 12 and 20, we might actually be talking about a defense that doesn't make us want to throw the remote through the TV every Sunday. Let's start with the dream scenario that's not completely out of reach, and I'm talking about snagging Malaki Starks at 12 and pairing him with Chris Johnson Jr. at 20. I know what you're thinking. Starks falling to 12 sounds like fantasy football talk, but hear me out. Crazier things have happened on draft night, and if a couple teams reach for quarterbacks, or if someone trades up ahead of us, Starks could absolutely be sitting there. This kid from Georgia is everything you want in a modern safety. He can cover slot receivers, he can play deep, he can come down and thump in the run game, and he's got that dog mentality that this defense has been missing since the days when we had actual enforcers back there. Pairing him with Chris Johnson Jr. at corner would give you 2 defensive backs who can play multiple spots. And that versatility is what Mike Zimmer dreams about when he's scheming up coverage. Johnson can slide inside to the slot, he can play outside, and he's physical enough to contribute on special teams immediately. And the crazy part is, you'd be walking into day 2 having addressed 2 massive holes without reaching on either pick. But here's where it gets really fun. What if Dallas just said, forget balance, we're going all in on one position group and completely solving it in one night? Picture this. You take Mansoor Delane at 12, and then you grab Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at 20, and before you say that's overkill, just think about what that secondary would look like. Delane is a legitimate number 1 corner who can shadow the other team's best receiver. He was absolutely dominant at LSU this past season, and he's got the length and athleticism to win at the line of scrimmage, which is exactly what you need when you're playing against CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown twice a year in practice and games. Then you slide McNeil-Warren into that slot corner role, or even let him play some free safety because he's got the size and the instincts to do both. And suddenly you've got Trevon Diggs on one side, Delane on the other, Darren Bland working as your nickel corner, and McNeil-Warren giving you chess piece flexibility that lets Zimmer get creative. Yeah, you'd still have questions at linebacker and on the defensive line, but if you can't run on us and you can't throw on us, does it even matter? I know some of you are screaming at your phone right now saying we need pass rush or we need a linebacker, and you're not wrong. But building an elite secondary means your defensive line gets an extra second to get home. It means you can disguise blitzes better. It means quarterbacks hold the ball longer and make mistakes. Would you rather have a decent corner and a decent linebacker, or would you rather have a shutdown secondary that makes life easier for everyone else on that defense? Let me know in the comments because I genuinely want to hear how you'd approach this. Now let's talk about pairings that feel a little more realistic based on how the draft boards are shaking out right now. One combination I keep coming back to is snagging Jihaad Campbell at 12, if he's there, and then taking TJ Sanders at 20. Campbell is that big physical linebacker who can run, he can cover tight ends, he can blow up running backs in the hole, and he'd immediately become the tone setter on this defense that frankly has been soft for too long. We've watched opposing offenses run right through the middle of this defense for 2 straight seasons, and it's been painful. Campbell changes that on day 1. Then at 20, you're looking at Sanders, who is one of the most polished cornerbacks in this class. He might not have the ceiling of a guy like Delane, but his floor is so high that you know exactly what you're getting. A day 1 starter who can play outside, who won't get bullied in the run game, and who processes routes fast enough to play in Zimmer's system without a learning curve. That's a draft where you're adding 2 starters at premium positions, and you're not overthinking it. You're just taking good football players who fill needs, and sometimes that's the smartest move you can make. Here's another scenario that would have me fired up. What if Dallas goes defense line heavy and grabs Kenneth Grant at 12 and then doubles down with Dante Corleone later? Or goes after a guy like Nazir Stackhouse at 20? Grant is a monster in the middle. He's the kind of nose tackle that eats double teams for breakfast and still finds a way to affect the play. And if you pair him with Maisie Smith, who's finally starting to figure things out, you'd have an interior that teams just cannot move in short yardage. Then you add Stackhouse, who can play inside and outside on the defensive line, who has pass rush upside, and who plays with the kind of motor that coaches fall in love with. And suddenly you've got a front seven that can actually control the line of scrimmage. I know that doesn't solve corner or safety, but here's the thing. If you can stop the run and get pressure with 4 guys, you can survive with average defensive backs. We've seen it work in San Francisco. We've seen it work in Philadelphia when they had their dominant defensive line years. The question is, do you trust the corners you already have enough to invest this heavily up front? And that's where the debate gets spicy. Let's switch gears and talk about day 2 and day 3 because honestly, that's where this draft could be won or lost for Dallas. Everyone obsesses over the first round, but the teams that consistently compete are the ones finding starters and impact players on day 2 and rotational gems on day 3. One name that keeps popping up in my film study is Christian Story, the safety from Ole Miss who's probably going to go somewhere in that 3rd or 4th round range. This dude can hit, he's got range in the deep middle, and he's a high-character leader type that would fit perfectly in this locker room. If Dallas goes cornerback heavy early, grabbing Story on day 2 would give you that safety depth you're going to need, especially if you want to move guys around in different packages. Another guy I'm obsessed with is Evan Stewart. Wait, no, wrong sport. I'm talking about Bryce Cofield, the linebacker from Wisconsin who's flying under the radar, but has that college linebacker pedigree and the football IQ to make an impact on special teams immediately while developing into a rotational piece. He's not going to wow you with athleticism, but he's always in the right spot. He's a sure tackler, and those are the guys who end up playing for a decade in this league. On day 3, I want Dallas to take a flyer on a couple guys who have legit upside but come with questions that drop them down boards. Give me Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, if he somehow falls to day 3. I know running back isn't a massive need, but this kid is a workhorse who can pass, protect, and catch. And if you can get that kind of value late, it's worth it. Another name is Jatavion Sanders' teammate, just kidding. But seriously, look at someone like Anthony Belton from NC State as a tackle project. He's got the size and the movement skills but needs technique work. And if you can develop him behind Tyler Smith and Terrence Steele, you might have a starter in year 2 or 3. The late rounds are also where you should be targeting specialists, guys who are going to make their money on special teams. Because if we're being honest, Dallas has been mediocre to bad on special teams for years, and that's lost us close games. Find me a gunner who can fly down the field. Find me a long snapper if you need one. Find me a core special teamer who runs a 4.4 and lives to make tackles on kicks. Those guys matter more than people think. Now let's talk about the players who have absolutely crushed the pre-draft process, because this stuff matters when you're evaluating who to take. Malaki Starks did everything you could possibly ask for. He ran well at the combine, he interviewed off the charts by all accounts, and he showed up at the Senior Bowl ready to prove he's the best safety in this class. That's the kind of process that makes you feel confident pulling the trigger in the first round, because you're not just drafting talent, you're drafting preparation and maturity. Another guy who helped himself big time is James Williams from Miami. Wait, no, he's been inconsistent. I'm actually thinking about Tacario Davis from Arizona, who came into the process with questions about his speed and then ran in the low 4.4s and jumped out of the gym. When a guy answers the questions you have about him before you even pick up the phone, that's when you start bumping him up your board. On the flip side, you've got guys who had rough processes and are sliding, and that's where value can be found if you trust your evaluation. But it's also where busts happen if you're wrong. The combine and pro days are cool, but what I really pay attention to is the Senior Bowl, because that's where you see guys compete against legit competition in practice, not just run in shorts. Chris Johnson Jr. was one of the stars of that week. He was physical at the line, he was competitive in one-on-ones, and coaches came away raving about his football character. That stuff matters because you can teach technique, but you can't teach want to. You can't teach a guy to care more. Another player who showed out was Jihaad Campbell doing linebacker drills and coverage drills against tight ends and running backs. He looked smooth and natural, and for a guy his size to move like that, it turns heads. These are the guys who are rising on Dallas's board guaranteed, because the Cowboys have shown under this scouting regime that they value the process. They value how guys show up when the lights are on, and they're not just drafting off college tape alone. Here's the part that should make every Cowboys fan nervous, though. Dallas has a history of overthinking this and getting cute when they should just take the obvious pick. How many times have we seen them pass on a need to take best player available, and then that position they skipped becomes a disaster? I'm not saying reach on a guy who's not worth it, but if there's a corner or a linebacker sitting there at 12 who's in your top 10 players overall, you take him and you don't look back. The worst thing this front office could do is talk themselves into a project player or a guy with upside but a low floor. Because this team is in win-now mode whether they admit it or not. Dak isn't getting younger, the window is closing, and we need guys who can play in September, not September, 3 years from now. And the crazy part is this draft is deep enough at the positions we need that there's really no excuse to mess this up. Corners are everywhere in this class, linebackers are available, defensive line has depth. If you can't find 3 or 4 defensive starters in this draft, then you're just bad at your job. Let me hit you with one more pairing that I think would be a home run, and it's a little different from what most people are mocking. What if Dallas stays at 12 and takes the best corner on the board, whether that's Delane or Maxwell or whoever they have highest, and then at 20 they trade back a few spots, pick up an extra third-rounder, and still grab a guy like Tacario Davis or Kobe Bryant who might slide a bit? That extra third-round pick could be the difference in moving up on day 2 to grab a linebacker or a safety you love, or it could be used to add depth at multiple spots. Trading back from 20 makes a ton of sense if the board doesn't fall perfectly, because the value in this draft is in that late first, early second range. And if you can collect picks and still get your guys, that's elite asset management. I know fans hate trading back because it feels like you're not aggressive enough, but if you trade back 5 spots and pick up a third and still get a starting corner, you just won the trade. Period. Let's talk about what happens if Dallas goes completely off script and does something nobody is expecting. What if they trade up from 12 to grab one of the top guys? What if they fall in love with Will Johnson or Benjamin Morrison and decide we're not risking losing him? We're going up to 7 or 8 to get our guy. I'm not saying I'd love that move because you're giving up serious capital, but if you truly believe you're getting a perennial Pro Bowl corner who's going to lock down one side of the field for 10 years, is it really that crazy? The Rams built a dynasty by trading future picks for guys they believed in. The Eagles have been aggressive moving around the board, and it's worked out more often than not. The conservative approach is safe, but safe doesn't win you championships. At some point, you have to trust your eval and go get your dude. Would you be mad if Dallas traded both first-rounders to move into the top 5 for Will Johnson? Honestly, think about that, because I could see scenarios where that makes sense if they think he's a true blue-chip game wrecker. Here's what keeps me up at night. What if Dallas doesn't address linebacker at all in the first 2 rounds, and we go into next season with the same issues we've had for 3 straight years? Watching opposing tight ends run free up the seam, watching running backs gash us for 7 yards a pop, watching our linebackers get swallowed up by offensive linemen because they don't have the size or the power to shed blocks. It's been painful and it has to stop. If this draft ends and we don't have at least one legitimate answer at linebacker, I'm going to lose my mind, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. The good news is, this linebacker class is solid. You've got Campbell, you've got Scooby Williams, you've got guys on day 2 like Barrett Carter and Jamin Dumas Johnson who can play, so there's options. But Dallas has to actually pull the trigger on one of them. They can't just assume Damone Clark is going to magically figure it out, or that a late-round pick is going to become a starter. We need a real investment at the position. And here's what nobody is talking about enough. The mental side of this draft matters just as much as the physical tools. Dallas needs to draft guys who are mentally tough, who don't fold when things get hard, who show up in big moments, because we've seen too many Cowboys teams that are talented on paper, but soft when it matters. That's a culture issue, and it starts with who you bring into the building. If you draft high-character competitors who hate losing more than they like winning, that changes your locker room over time. I want dogs. I want guys who are going to be mad if they give up a completion. I want linebackers who take it personal when someone runs through their gap. I want that edge and that attitude, because skill only gets you so far in January. One more thing before I wrap this up. Special teams cannot be ignored in this draft. I know it's not sexy. I know nobody wants to use a pick on a long snapper or a gunner. But championships are won and lost on special teams, and Dallas has been below average for too long. If there's a returner available on day 3 who can actually make guys miss and give you good field position, take him. If there's a core special teamer who's going to fly down on coverage and make 3 tackles a game, take him. These are the little things that separate the good teams from the great ones. And Dallas has been losing games by a field goal, or a big return, or a blocked kick. Those plays matter, and you need players who take pride in that phase. So here's my final take before I ask you to weigh in. This draft comes down to one simple question. Does Dallas have the guts to be aggressive and go get the guys they believe in? Or are they going to play it safe and hope value falls to them? I want aggression. I want them to have a board and stick to it. I want them to trade up if their guy is there. I want them to take corners and linebackers and safeties until the defense is fixed. And I want them to ignore the noise and draft for need because we know what the needs are. We've watched this defense get shredded for 2 years. If they nail this draft, if they come away with 3 or 4 defensive starters and a couple of developmental pieces, this team can compete in the NFC. The offense is already elite when healthy. The offensive line is solid. We just need a defense that doesn't give up 30 points a game. And the crazy part is, this draft is set up perfectly for Dallas to do exactly that. The talent is there. The depth is there. The only question is, will they execute? Thursday night is going to tell us everything we need to know about whether this front office is serious about winning now, or if we're in for another frustrating season of what-ifs and almosts. If you made it this far, drop a comment and tell me what pairing you want to see at 12 and 20. Are you team double cornerback? Are you team linebacker and corner? Are you team trade up and get a blue chip guy? I want to hear it because the best part of draft season is debating this stuff with real fans who care as much as I do. And before you go, if you haven't subscribed yet, come on, what are you waiting for? Hit that button so you don't miss any of our draft coverage because we're going to be live on Thursday, breaking down every pick the second it happens. We're in this together. Let's get this defense right and make some noise next season. Go Cowboys.